Okay, it'd be great to start perhaps with just a little bit of background on Omega Systems, brief history to date, any key milestones, etc. Just, yeah, give us a little bit of a flavor about the company.
Yeah, so Mega Systems is a managed services provider and managed security services provider. Our headquarters is in Reading, Pennsylvania. We were founded in 2002, so about 23 years old at this point. And Omega didn't start as an MSP. In 2002, MSPs didn't exist. There was just VARs, people sold hardware, did projects and reactive support, but their industry really changed like 2005, 2006, 2007. So about 2007 is when we had started to build out our managed services offerings and transition the business away from that reactive time and materials to a proactive and recurring revenue business model. So that started in 2007, and we're just continuing to innovate. Today, last year, and even this year, we released new services that enhance security, better protect our customers' environments. But over the years, we started with service desk, then we moved into private cloud hosting, then managed security in late 2018, 2019. So today Omega has acquired 4 companies. Again, we're headquartered in Reading, PA. We have offices in Southern Jersey, Northern Jersey, New York City, Stamford, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. All in all, we're about 180 employees.
Okay, and part of the reason we're having a chat today is that you've fairly recently received some strategic investment, I believe, from Revelstoke Capital Partners, and I guess it would be good to understand a little bit of the background to this investment. Were you actively looking for that? Did they approach you? How did that come about, if you like?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, Omega was founded, like I said, in 2002, and it was founded by a husband and wife company. But and we grew organically up until about 2020, until we realized that we grew the business to a point, but started to see the consolidation happening in the industry. Right, we see our peers getting acquired, and private equity began to get very interested in the MSP space. So it was 2020. It was actually I think it was like the fall of 2019 when we started the process of consulting with an advisor and looking to bring on our first private equity sponsor. And then COVID happened, so we put everything on pause. But it was 2021 when we received our first investment from Finkston Partners, headquartered in Chicago, Illinois. And they brought in some guidance, access to capital, better processes, and gave us the bandwidth to really continue to grow the business organically, but then also through acquisition. And it was and they were very happy with the work we did. And it was in 2024 when they decided, okay, we're happy with what Omega has done, and we're ready to bring on we think it's time that you bring on a new strategic investor, and they exit the company. So we started that process in about summer of 24, and then completed the transaction with Revelstoke in January of 25. So Revelstoke is our second strategic investor in Omega. And they're just looking to really do the same thing with Omega, is to kind of grow again organically, but with a focus on the healthcare space, which is really interesting to us. Omega is, if you look at our revenue, a majority of our revenue today comes from financial services, and Revelstoke saw this and said, well, this is good, keep that, grow that, but we see another vertical where you could really dive into, and that's healthcare, and that's what we want to do with you together. So very exciting, and it's an exciting time to be at the company, because this new round of funding has given us more renewed focus and direction for the next at least 5 years for company growth.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I was going to ask what the investors are going to use for, and one of those, we might as well start there. So you say, I think it's to deepen support for regulated industries. So obviously, you say you've got a good, strong background in finance. I guess healthcare is similar. I mean, are there others, or are those two going to keep you very busy, or is sort of regulated industry something you want to expand your specialization, if you like?
Well, and that's a great point, Phil, because when you look at Omega's customer base, almost all of them, or say majority, come from some type of regulated industry. So it could be healthcare, it could be local government, it could be manufacturing, just any of those three. And there's several fringe ones that go up there in insurance. So when we talk about financial services, right, that's banking, traditional community banks, credit unions. But then we also have alternative investment, private equity, hedge, VC, family office as customers as well too. So finance is a very big category for us, right? And very diversified. Healthcare is going to be the same way, right? But the underpinnings of all of those is there's some type of regulation or regulating body that says you must implement these security controls, you must have 24/7 SOC services, or you must have an MSP to help you with services. And if you don't, there's penalties. There's financial penalties, reputational damage, or inevitably the business won't be able to operate. So we see the regulated end markets as a great customer for Omega. We really grew up focusing on those regulated end markets, and with our acquisitions, we've gained access to additional end markets outside of just the core Omega from a financial services banking perspective.
Okay, and in terms of other sort of plans for the investment, maybe you could perhaps say a little bit about geographical expansion, which I think you've got plans to do some of that. So I'm sure you won't necessarily give away too many secrets, but just anything you can tell us about what you're planning.
Yeah. So the next 5 years are going to be growth. We want to grow nationwide. We're operating nationwide today. We have customers nationwide. We have staff all over the U.S. But when you look at Omega today, our geographic footprint from an office perspective is really concentrated in the Northeast. We want to grow. We want to grow to be a nationwide company in the next 5 years, and that'll come mainly through acquisition.
Okay, yeah. So I was going to ask, it's safe to assume that there may be some more acquisitions. So I think you've just answered that question.
Yeah.
So no, that's good. And then I think the other sort of planned area investment wise is you've obviously referenced that you're very strong, security and compliance portfolio is very much you. So you're looking to invest in further developing solutions. Will that, I mean, in sort of general terms, will that be developing existing, sort of portfolio, or have you got any plans to sort of introduce any sort of radically different things, or what sort of combination of innovation are we looking at, I suppose?
Yeah, so it's going to be both, right? We're going to continue to progress the services that we've built. So one of our core security services, Smart Secure, is perimeter-based security, right? So we're deploying a firewall on site. We're managing that. We're configuring all the policies, keeping it up with best practices, firmware updates, and really managing that perimeter security. But as the world has changed, customers are, their physical footprint is becoming, less and less important. We were seeing some customers even operating without an office. So now we're moving to more of a cloud-based security solution. So this year we'll be launching a version of Smart Secure that is all cloud-based, intended for these no offices or completely telework situations. And then we're going to be developing new security technologies or strategies just around where the market is going. People will ask me sometimes, like, what's going to happen in the next 5 years with technology? And no one has a crystal ball. If we talked probably 2 years ago, no one was talking about AI. Now, at least once a day, I'm talking to someone about what AI can do for the business, or how is Omega using AI, or our partners that we're using in service delivery, what AI they're building into their technology stack to further enhance the customer experience, or just make Omega a better partner for our customers. So we didn't know AI existed 2 years ago, and here it is. So it's really hard to say from here, 3-5 years in the future, what's going to be there. But the focus is going to be security and compliance, right? We are seeing more and more governing bodies, regulatory requirements get kind of pushed down from the top, whether it's state perspective, federal government. That's going to continue. I'm waiting for the day when there's regulations on MSPs. There's only one state in the U.S. today that has that. I envision in the next 5 years there'll be more and more and more. When it comes to our customers, we're seeing it ramp up. HIPAA, for example. There was just a draft, comments that were released, I think it was last fall, and then finalized in January, where now, there's going to be some more stringent requirements for reportings of data breach. More reliance or more effort put into SOC and 24/7 security services. And penalties right away, where today if you go through a HIPAA audit, there's a long process, and there's findings, and then there's the kind of the fines that come. It's going to be reversed, where from what we understand, HIPAA can come in and audit your environment and assess a penalty immediately if you're failing to comply for anything. So that type of change, when it goes into effect, it's going to take healthcare organizations time to adapt, time to implement, obviously before the actual ruling goes into effect. But that means more services that Omega is going to be able to provide to our customers and become a better partner and keep them kind of on the forefront and ahead of these changes rather than being, kind of a victim of a penalty because they failed to comply.
Yeah, I mean, I think you sort of partly probably answered the next question, but I'll ask anyway. In terms of the sort of more generally cybersecurity compliance opportunity for MSPs or MSSPs, I suppose flip it the other way, the customer pain points, and you seem to be suggesting that it's the compliance part that's maybe, I mean, clearly the sort of cybersecurity bread and butter is not going to go away, but you think compliance is the sort of big growth area where there are more pain points for customers to address. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely, yeah. So you have compliance where there's a set of requirements that you have to meet or you have to implement, and then a lot of those then drive service adoption for our customers. So if we go into a customer and do a security assessment around a certain framework, and they're missing EDR, well, Omega will supply that service to them. Or if they're missing managed security awareness training, we'll supply that to them. You just kind of go down through the list and you kind of look at the control, what's required, and then the kind of technical component. Omega has everything in our service catalog. And if we don't, this is where the innovation comes from the prior question, is we will be building those service offerings to meet the compliance requirements of our customers. That's our job as an MSP and MSSP, and as a good partner. We don't want our customers to have to go elsewhere. But you're right, and this is how we see it: is compliance is going to really drive the security service adoption. And security services is really large. We mentioned EDR, MFA. Those are like core services today that everyone should have, but a lot of people, truthfully and unfortunately, don't buy them until either they've had a security incident, right? They've had a breach, or they've had something happen, or there's a regulating body saying you must have this, or you can't operate in this space, or you can't run your business. Very rare do we see customers who just, out of we'll say, precaution, go and purchase some of these enhanced, and really they are expensive security services. There's a lot of cost that goes into the software development, a lot of cost that goes into the labor. But if there's no governing body saying you must purchase this, we're seeing a lot of customers wait until someone says, I have to, someone's telling me I got to do this, so now I'm going to do it.
And I guess in terms of it's a fairly competitive market. So in terms of how MSPs, MSSPs can stand out, and I guess using yourselves, as an example, what do you think are the things that help differentiate yourselves or a good MSSP from the rest of the market, if you like? What's important?
Yeah, it's a good question. When we started the MSP services, years ago, our founder, Bill, he's like, he really struggled with the fact that, there's tons of competition in this space. You pull up, kind of any phone book or Yellow Pages and just Google MSP in your area, you'll get half a dozen. There's at least, a dozen competitors in our local area, right? And the challenge is there's no governing body for MSPs. There's no, the state, the federal government has said, in order to run an MSP, you must do these things. Like your employees have to be trained, they have to get certain certifications. You think of if you want to practice law, well, you have to go to law school, you have to pass the bar, right? If you want to become a doctor, same practice. Even for a CPA, it's the same thing. That doesn't exist today for MSPs. So in one way, it's kind of like the wild, wild west. So as a consumer, it's really hard to figure out what Omega does differently versus our competitor down the road, right? So when we get asked this question, right, the question you ask is, how do we stand out? What makes us difference? It's a couple different things. Customer service is paramount, number one, right? And when I interview people, we don't generally hire the techiest people, right? We got to have a good balance of technical experience, but also the ability to communicate, right? Verbally, written, explain the problem, how you got to the resolution, right? That's important to the customer service experience because our customers are not technical. They're hiring us to do that work for them, right? Secondly is our product depth and just technology stack. That's one of the things that we learned Going through kind of our second round in investment, talking with some potential investors, that when we sat down and presented our security stack, our technology stack, and how we package it and how we price it, everything everyone had said, we were very impressed with everything you've built. And kind of we shared with them the product roadmap for the next year or so, and they just were, everyone was excited to see what we built. And then it's our people, right? This is a services business. This is a people business. So we want to make sure we're taking care of our employees, and we're bringing the best employees to our customers. That ties back to kind of point number one, right, about customer service experience. But when I'm asked, like, why should I choose Omega? What makes this better is, like, it's simple things. Like when you call our service desk 24, we're running 24/7. You're going to get a live person. You aren't going to get someone who's just going to take your name and number and call you back later, or get a voicemail. Like, it's those types of things from a customer service experience that us as a larger MSP can deliver, and everyone in our space is. But where we're seeing kind of the discrepancy is some of the people that are a little bit smaller than us haven't grown to the scale that we have. So by partnering with a larger company, you're gaining access to a deeper technical bench, right? Better management team, products that are all available kind of under the roof, so to speak. We don't have to go to third parties or bring in other partners. And it's that dedicated customer service experience. I can't preach that enough, because that's, again, the thing that sets us apart from others is when we're taking on customers from other MSPs. It's the number one reason why they're looking or shopping is they aren't happy with the service experience. And that could be ticket resolution, it could be billing, it could be turnaround on product, you name it. But it's that service experience that we kind of try to beat into everyone's minds here. Is we're a customer services organization, or I say we're a customer services organization that focuses on technology.
Okay, and maybe just finally, clearly the industry sort of seems to work to a certain extent in cycles. So you're sort of outsourcing, then people come back into just any thoughts you might have as to the future, because you've got obviously the rise of managed services for very obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Some people, were the cloud was everything, and then we're hearing some people are sort of coming out of the cloud because it's not all that they thought it would be, or it's very expensive. So I don't know if you've just got any thoughts as to how you see that sort of a landscape evolving. I know hybrid's everyone's sort of favorite word, but how you see MSP services versus cloud versus on-prem, just any thoughts you might share.
Yeah, so we can talk on the cloud piece first, because that's pretty apparent. Is it's even, we'll say 5-6 years ago, Omega, we did a lot of project work. Like, we sold a lot of servers, on-premise hardware, server compute hardware. We would do maybe 10 to 12 of those systems a year. Now we're doing, maybe 2 to 3. And what people are doing is, instead of buying the on-premise hardware, they're moving into a private cloud solution in one of Omega's data centers, or into a public cloud solution through Microsoft Azure or AWS or GCP. So that has been a big shift. We haven't seen a lot of customers kind of go straight to the public cloud and then come back to on-premise. Instead, they go from public cloud back to private cloud. So they're okay, kind of letting go of it. But you're right, sometimes public cloud isn't all it's cracked up to be for them, or it just wasn't a good fit at the time, or their business requirements change. They bring on a new application that now it doesn't run in public cloud, but it requires private cloud. So we can deliver that on-premise experience, but they don't have to worry about the hardware, the care and feeding, the maintenance, and things like that. When it comes to kind of the insourcing, versus partnering, we're seeing kind of a shift a lot right now, and I think part of it is driven by the economy, right? Is people are starting to adopt outsourcing or partnering with Omega, more and more frequently, partnering with MSPs, I should say. They're more open to it. When they sit down and look at kind of our cost structure and what we can provide versus doing it themselves with their own FTEs, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? It's from a financial decision, right? It's a no-brainer. You really should partner with an MSP, because you're going to get more value for that dollar spend. Us as an MSP, we have well over 100 plus technical employees that the customer is paying for a fraction of, but we can get them the experience they need. If you were to hire a service desk person, a desktop support, a server, and a network engineer to support a 100-person company, you're going to spend way more on salaries, training, and software than partnering with someone like Omega. And I think what you're going to see is, hopefully the economy stabilizes, but we have seen historically during this economic downturns, that's when we see outsourcing or partnering with an MSP like Omega increase, because customers are looking to tighten their belt, right? And one the way they do that is by eliminating any internal IT staff and partnering with an MSP to deliver the same or better services.
Okay, I mean, it's been great to chat and some lovely insights into what's going on at the company and the market more generally. So Ben, just really appreciate your time today. Thanks very
Yes,
much.
yeah, yours as well, Phil. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.